Gavin Williamson will outline plans for children to return to school on March 8 at a Downing Street press conference. The Education Secretary will appear in Number 10 at 5 p.m. to give parents details of how the reopening of classrooms in England is set to go ahead. And he will also unveil plans to pump £700 million into providing extra tuition for the kids who have lost out most during. His press conference comes after the PM confirmed in his roadmap out of restrictions that schools will be the first thing to read. Mr Williamson is expected to give extra details of how that will happen, including plans for mass testing and a staggered return for some secondary. He will also outline how teacher assessments will replace exams for GCSE and A-level students this year. The Education Secretary said earlier, "Our focus is very much in terms of welcoming children back on the 8th. It's an incredibly important part of our unlocking the country, but it also goes to confirm the national priority is our children and their education. We've always said schools would be the last to close and first to open, and we've been absolutely true to our." Today Mr Williamson refused to rule out extending the school day or cutting short the summer break to help disadvantaged. He said, "He'll be looking at how we can boost and support children in a whole range of different manners. But it's not just about time in school, it's about supporting teachers in terms of the quality of teaching and how we can help them." And he said secondary schools will be allowed to stagger students' return to the classroom to help them cope. Under the government's plans, older students will need to be tested 3 times over their first fortnight back, subject to parents' permission. Mr Williamson said, "Schools are able to bring year groups in from 8 March depending on their capacity as to how they're best able to do that. They've got a week to bring all those pupils back, so they can be tested during that. If schools think they have the capacity to get pupils through by 8th of March, of course they can have them. All primary schools will be coming back on 8th of March as well." The Education Secretary also revealed the requirement for secondary school kids to wear masks in the classroom will be reviewed at Easter, but he didn't rule out that the policy could be in place until June 21st, the final date in the plan to ease the law. It comes after Mr Williamson said he's looking at the whole expanse of what we can do in terms of helping children have extra teeth. There are fears millions will be left behind after missing out on almost a year of time. Under new plans, teachers will be asked to cut short holidays to help secondary kids with face-to-face lessons before the new school year starts in September. Ministers want Year 7 pupils to get first dibs on classes, but say they will leave it up to head teachers to pick who should get priority. England's schools will get an extra £200 million to pay teachers to staff the classes, which can also include sport and other. But despite the extra cash, one source said Downing Street was braced for another almighty row with hardline union. Mr Williamson was repeatedly pressed this morning on whether the extra cash could be used to extend the school day or shorten. He said, "We're looking at a whole range of different actions. What we wanted to do is give schools the extra resources to take action, and the best support we can do is seeing children back in the classroom on March 8th, something all parents want to see, all children want to see, and teachers want to see." Asked if he expects schools to be open in the summer, he replied, "We are giving schools the option of being able to draw down on this funding. We always see schools up and down the country doing so much of this. I would hope that all schools are able to do that. Take advantage of the funding that's available, target that resource at those children." He added, "What it does do is it gives schools the extra resource to be able to give extra pay for teachers to do overtime, support staff to do overtime, to help them assist with children to do that extra learning, that extra bit of education, that extra support that goes the extra mile and helps children to be able to bounce back from this pandemic." Mr Williamson said an extra 2 hours of tutoring over a 12-week period can help a child catch up on up to 5 months of lost. The Sun understands that ministers have considered extending the school day, but believe it would be too complicated for now. That's because unions are demanding new contracts for teachers if they're asked to prolong their working day. Under the plans, £500 million will also go on expanding tutoring schemes. About £302 million of this is for a new COVID recovery premium to support kids in primaries and secondaries, based on the pupil premium, which already funnels extra cash to the most disadvantaged. Primary schools will get around £6,000 each, while secondaries will receive on average £22,000. The cash comes on top of a £1 billion pot announced 6 months ago, and will be used to roll out summer lessons and camps, and for an expansion of the national tube. Mr Williamson also revealed that the government will set out details of how teacher assessments will be used to replace exams this year and the next. He insisted, "As we've said many times before, we're not going to be running exams this year. It's going to be based on teacher judgment." His remarks come with schools gearing up to welcome pupils back on March 8th as the first stage of the PM's roadmap. They will be expected to carry out 3 tests on each secondary student over the first 2 weeks, so long as parents provide permission.